Hello, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Dani, and today it's time to talk about the books that I read in January. So because I read 10 books in January, I thought it would be cool to do some stats about it because it closes like perfectly with 10 books. Of those, I read 1,899 pages, actual pages, and I listened to 45.5 hours of audiobook, which is a lot. My average rating was 4, which is also a lot, is very high. And I started 2 series, I continued 2 series, and that's pretty much it. So I listened to 6 audiobooks and I read 3 physical books and 1 ebook. 8 of those were novels and 2 novellas. 9 were adult books and 1 was a young adult book. About genres, I read 3 fantasy, 2 sci-fi, 2 nonfiction, and then 1 mystery, 1 thriller, 1 contemporary. And for ratings, I had 3 5 stars, 2 4.5 stars, 2 3.5, 2 3 stars, and 1 2.5 stars, which is a mess. But you can see there on the screen somewhere. You can visualize that better because just me saying all those numbers don't mean a lot. There are some of these books that I want to talk more about and some that I don't have a lot to say, or it's just I don't even remember a lot in one of them at least, which that's interesting, but I won't have a lot to say about them, and some I really want to talk more about. So let's start with nonfiction, which I don't have a lot to say. So I listened to Beyond the One by Tom Felton, it's his memoir, and I grew up with Harry Potter. We're not gonna go into that, but I was really curious to read his memoir and listen to it because it's always fun when the author of the memoir narrates the audiobook. And I gave it 3.5. It was fine, it was interesting. It had a lot of anecdotes about his time filming the movies, and most of it was that. It didn't go much in depth in any of the stories. It was much more about him talking about how much he liked the cast members, which makes sense. And it was fun, but there were some stories that I already heard about, and just I wanted to know more about his life and his feelings in those situations more than like it was a whole chapter about Robbie Coltrane, a whole chapter about Emma Watson and like how they are awesome people, and I believe it, and it was great to listen to that, but I just wanted to know more about his experience, if that makes sense. There were some about his childhood before that, him growing up with his family, but I don't know, it was okay. It was interesting, but I'm not going to remember a lot from it. And then I also listened to the memoir of Lauren Graham. It's called Talking as Fast as I Can. She's Lorelai Gilmore from Gilmore Girls. And this one I gave 5 stars. Was it 4.5 or 5? It was 5 stars. I really love Gilmore Girls, and I think this one was what I wanted from the other one. So she rewatched all the episodes of Gilmore Girls and really talked about what was going on in her head and what was going on in those situations when that happened. So I really enjoyed it. And again, I listened, it's her narrating it, so that's perfect. And I would really recommend it if you like Gilmore Girls. There's also some about like her experience around it, but I also read her other book, Someday Maybe, and she talks about that as well, and she talks about the revival of Gilmore Girls. I think this was published around when the new series was released, which makes sense, marketing, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. It made me want to rewatch Gilmore Girls, and I've always been a huge fan, so that makes sense that I would really enjoy to hear her talking about her experience in those situations. So I think that was a difference there, but also she's really funny, and I laughed out a lot while reading this book. And there's a lot of her getting into the industry as well. So yeah, I really enjoyed it, and this was one of the 5 stars. So now let's go into mysteries and thrillers. The one mystery I read, yeah, it was only one, was Finlay Donovan Knocks 'Em Dead. This is the second one in the Finlay Donovan series, and the first one was 5 stars, this one was 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed it a lot. I have a lot of fun with these books. They're very, very humorous, very funny. I can't really talk much about this one, but it pretty much sets up another hilarious, completely unbelievable story. And I really hope this would be made into movies because they would be really funny. But overall, really enjoyed it. like the first one more because in here she's already used to a lot of this stuff. So in the first one, she's figuring out a lot of other things that she already knows here. So some parts weren't, like some parts in the first one were funnier than in the second one, but still it was 4.5. Really, really enjoyed it. The ending was so much fun. There's a lot of mysteries in the middle of this, but there's one mystery here that in the ending it gets reviewed, and I loved it. It was really awesome, and I didn't expect it, and I thought it was hilarious. I already read the third book as well, but that was in February, so I'll talk about it in the February wrap-up. And then I read one thriller, which was All the Dangerous Things by Stacey Willingham. And I actually listened to the audiobook of this. This is an ARC. I got it on Goodreads, on the giveaways on Goodreads a while ago, but I didn't get to it until now, and the audiobook was available on Script, so I listened to it on audio. This was it the lowest rating of the year so far? Yep, I gave this 2.5 stars. It was completely average, hence the 2.5 stars. I think that's the most average rating in the way that I rate books. But this is one that I already kind of forgot. This made no lasting impression on me. It was not a bad book, but I could have lived without it, and I'm not interested in reading her other book that was already published, I think as A Flicker in the Dark. Maybe I'm wrong, but what was it about? Oh, it's about this woman. She lost her baby. It was her baby was kidnapped or something, and now she has insomnia, and that's pretty much it. She hasn't slept in like a year, like properly a full night's sleep for a year. There's a lot of things that make it easy in this book to make it so we don't trust what she's seeing. You know, so I don't know. It was a very average, very I would not recommend it, honestly. I think there are many better thrillers out there. But let me know if you've read it and if you liked it. It was fine. So I talked about 4 books. There are 6 left. 3 of them are fantasies, 2 sci-fi, and 1 contemporary. So let's get the contemporary out of the way because a lot of people will hate me, and you can click away if you hate me from saying that I did not really enjoy Tomorrow so much like everyone else. So I gave this book, I should put things more easily to find. I gave this book 3 stars. Again, not a bad rating. It was not a bad book at all. And also I listened to this on audio as well. And this is the story of 2 friends, Sam and what's her name? Sadie? Sadie and Sam, they've been friends since they were children, and we're basically following their story. It starts, we get a lot of flashbacks from their childhood, but it starts when they meet at a subway station and they decide that they're going to build a video game together. And that's where it all starts. And I work in the video game industry, so I thought, and I really love video games like in general, so I thought this book was going to be amazing, and I did enjoy a lot the video game talk, the video game aspects, the industry and all of that conversation here. But the rest, like the actual story of Sam and Sadie, was very boring. I understand the hype. I understand why people like it so much. There are a lot of deep conversations here. It's a very much slice of life, and we get a lot of real talk about a lot of things. He has a disability. She has been in an abusive relationship with her professor. And there's just a lot of conversation about a lot of real life stuff. But it was just not exciting. And then at some point here towards the end, I'm not gonna say what, but something happened that when we were leading to it, I hope that's not what it is. And then it was, and then they made it worse. So it was like there was a big chunk on the ending of the book that was very, very cliche, and I really didn't like how it was handled in the book. I thought it was very cheap and very just like for impact, not something that made sense or needed to happen, or I don't know. Oh, I can put the books here now that I have the table. Okay. So yeah, I didn't like it. If you like contemporary stories, that the issue for me is not even that nothing happens. There's a lot that happens in this book. Usually contemporary, just like nothing happens, but we follow a big chunk of their lives, and there's a lot of story, and there's a lot of different games that they develop. And like I said, this part was great, and that's why the rating wasn't lower, because if they were working in any other type of industry, the rating would be lower for me, because that's the part that I enjoyed. Like all the video game talks and like nostalgia for older games and all of that stuff. So yeah, I get it, but it was not for me, and I'm sorry, and we're gonna move on. So now we have sci-fi and fantasy, and one of my big goals for the year is to read more sci-fi, because I usually really love sci-fi, but I don't reach out to it any, like, as much as I would want. Because fantasies, I feel like there's always more volume of fantasy being released than sci-fi, or at least that I hear about. So I'm trying to remedy that and read more sci-fi this year. So I read 2 in January, and let's talk about them. One was 3.5 stars and the other was 5 stars. So let's start with a lower rating, which is The Immortality Thief by Taryn Hunt. So this one came in Goldsboro, and look at these edges, it's so gorgeous. And I really love just how this book looks. And it was a really good read. It was 3.5. It was very, very entertaining. And the story here is that we have this linguist who's been arrested. I forgot why. But the book starts when he's arrested, and he's being recruited for this mission to go on this spaceship to find some very important for humanity data. But the spaceship is right by a supernova that's about to explode. So you have like the time limit thing, like the time is running out because there's a supernova, and there are aliens, and there's all the mystery and creepy stuff happening on this ship because it's been abandoned for years and years and years. And it's a lot of fun. It's very fast paced. There's like nothing, you never stop in this book. There's always something going on. And that's one part of why my enjoyment of the story was a little bit lower, because I felt at some points it was a bit repetitive. Because there are some dangers on this ship that happens throughout the story, and there's not enough, I feel like, that they're always worried about the same things. There's nothing new that appears, so when they figure out how to deal with one thing, they kind of already know when the thing happens. If they encounter that danger again, they will kind of already know how to deal with it. Of course, it gets more dangerous as it goes, and especially with supernova and all of that. And there's a lot of people that want that data. So there's this person who hired the guy, the main character here. It's him and a small crew. And then there are the aliens, and then there's the Republic. I forgot if it's the Republic. Yeah, the Republic, which is basically the last government left for humans. So there are 3 different groups of people trying to get to this. So there are a lot of different ways that all of those things, plus the dangerous stuff on the ship, a lot of different configurations of how those things can happen on the ship. But so at some point it felt repetitive for me, but it sets up a really cool idea for a series, and it is the first of a series from what I saw on Goodreads. So I'm very excited to continue the series and very curious to see where we're going from here. But I would definitely recommend it if you like sci-fi, if you like fast-paced space sci-fi. They don't travel, like they just stay on this ship, but it's a huge ship. It takes a lot of time to go from one side to the other, and it's very exciting. It's a really cool world. Let me know if you've read it. I haven't heard anyone talking about this book at all, which was a cool experience to just read without having any expectations. But it was the first book that I got from Goldsboro, so I was very excited to jump in that story because the books that they send are so gorgeous. So that's it. It was 3.5, really entertaining. I will continue the series for sure, but it was not my new favorite. And then the last physical book that I have to show you, so let's bring all the others back here. so Doom's Luck can sit up higher. The other sci-fi, the last physical book that I read was Lost in Time by A.G. Riedel, and this was 5 stars. I loved it, and I was anticipating this book so much after I heard the premise last year. When I bought it, I said I wanted to read it in January, and I did, and it was so much different than what I expected, but I still loved it, and it went places that I wanted, like I didn't know that I wanted it to go, basically. So this is the story of this man. He's an astrophysicist, quantum physicist. Makes more sense for the story. He's a quantum physicist that works on this company that created time travel, a time travel machine. It takes a lot of time for things to happen on this book, but I feel like there's no better way to say what the premise is. Basically, he is accused of a crime, and this machine, no, I'm not gonna say that, and he's sent to the to dinosaur era. He's sent to an island, not an island, he's sent to the past for when dinosaurs existed. So that's the premise of the story, but it's so much more than that, because we're following him and his story with that, and we're following his daughter. She is 19 years old, if I believe, and we have both of their point of views. And I thought the dinosaurs would be my favorite part, but it's very low on dinosaurs. I will tell you that already. So if you go into it because of the dinosaurs, know that there's very little dinosaurs in this book. And I did go for the dinosaurs, but I was surprised that I was enjoying the point of view of his daughter so much more. And like I said, it went places that I did not expect and that I had a lot of fun with. It's very over the top. If you try to nitpick everything, you'll find flaws probably, but if you just go into it for the fun of it, it's a lot of fun and just a really interesting concept that they created, that the author created here, that I really enjoyed. It reminded me a lot of how I felt when I was reading Dark Matter by Blake Crouch, which is also one of my favorite books, also 5 stars. I don't think it's as well constructed and crafted as Dark Matter was, although I have to reread it because I don't remember as much. But it's the same feeling that it's very fast-paced, it's one thing after the other, and I didn't expect what was going to happen. I didn't predict one of the things that happened here. That was one of my favorite things, and I really enjoyed it. So I would say if you like the feeling of being immersed in a really well-crafted story like Dark Matter, I would recommend this. But it is less science-heavy than Dark Matter is, than Blake Crouch's books in general. Like, I just know Recursion and Upgrade and Dark Matter, but this is less science-heavy, although there's a lot of science talk, but you can pretty much ignore it. It's time travel. If you want to go into the details here, it is explained to some extent, but it's just a fun ride, and I really had a lot of fun with it. And now we only have the 3 fantasy books that I read in January, and weirdly enough, I don't have any physical books with me. I wanted to save this video until I received my copy of Tress of Emerald Sea, but I don't know when it's coming. They are having a lot of issues with the printer and all of that, so it's fine. I'll wait as long as I have as I need it, because I know that when it arrives it's gonna be gorgeous, and I want to reread it when it arrives because it was perfect. But let's start with the other 2 fantasy books first. So it's really good that Doom's Luck is here, because I read 2 books by Brandon Sanderson this month. None was Skyward, but I read Dark One Forgotten, which is an audio exclusive novella. I would say it doesn't say it's a novella, but I'm counting it as a novella because it was really short. It is in the format of a true crime podcast, or a fake true crime podcast, because it is a fantasy book in the world of Dark One. The only book that exists in this world is a graphic novel that I have not read, but I heard him talking about how Dark One Forgotten is a good place to start, and I wanted to go into it blind, so I didn't know anything about that universe. Which I think was good, because I still don't know a lot, and I am very curious to know more about the universe, and I know he's writing a whole novel about it with Dan Wells. Dark One Forgotten is co-written with Dan Wells and Brandon Sanderson, and it was a really good introduction to Dan Wells' writing, I would say, as he's going to be writing more in the Cosmere as well. So I'm really glad that I enjoyed this novella so much, this audio novella so much. and I ended up giving it 4.5 stars. It was, I think the best thing about this novella was how it was interpreted. It was a full cast, almost like you're listening to a movie. They're narrating in a very interpretive way, like they're acting everything that's happening. So when they are in danger or something, they're like really yelling or crying or like really, like there's all of that. You know what I mean? You get it. And it's very unique to hear those type of audiobooks. So I really enjoyed that. And the story of Dark One Forgotten is that this girl is creating this podcast about a violinist that disappeared, and people seem to have forgotten about her. So when they talked to her mom, the violinist mom, the mom was like, "Oh no, I never had a child." Like she completely forgot about her child. Everyone that ever knew this girl forgot that she existed, and she was kind of a prodigy. She was very important in the violin music world, but she was forgotten. And this girl is creating this podcast because her father disappeared, and she doesn't want him to be forgotten, and she wants to figure out what's happening. And it's true crime because she's investigating the disappearance or the forgettingness of this girl. So it's all in one audiobook format, but it is divided, I think, in 6 different like podcast episodes. That's the word I'm looking for. And it's really interesting. There's all those sounds and music-y things that podcasts have. And if you like true crime podcasts, if you like Brandon Sanderson, I guess, I would definitely recommend it. It was a lot of fun, very well written, and very intriguing, that I wanted to know what was going to happen, and I want to know more about this world for sure. And then before I get into Tress, because that's my favorite book so far I read this year, let's talk about Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Shauna Maguire. This is the second book in the Wayward Children series. It's a series of novellas. I listened to the audiobook of this one as well, as I did with the first book. And the first book had been 5 stars. But I feel like I was more in the hype of it when I read it, because I don't know, the second one just did not grab me. It was, again, really average. I think I gave it 3.5. Let me check. I gave it 3 stars. It was okay. I didn't dislike it, but I also didn't like it very much. I don't know if I want. I feel like I could continue the series. The audiobooks are really short, so when I want just something short to listen to, I could continue with it, but I didn't think it was unique or intriguing. I didn't care much about the characters at all. I thought it took forever for them. Like, the second one, we're following Jack and Joe when they go into this portal to the fantasy world that they explore. In the first book, they are in the house that every children who go to fantasy worlds, when they go back, they go to this house. If they can't handle it, they can go back to normal life. So they're in this house. But then the second one, we're following them in their fantasy world, and I don't know, it took forever for them to get there, and then when they were there, I just didn't really care about what was happening. I don't have a lot to say about this book, as you can tell. I would continue the series if I feel like we're listening to an easy, short audiobook, but otherwise, I don't think I care much about this world. I don't know, I've heard that the books alternate between being in the house and being in the portal fantasy world. So maybe I'll like the third book more, as I did with the first book, but it was okay. It was okay. Nothing much to say about this. And then we have Tress. Tress of the Emerald Sea was the first book I read this year. I backed Brandon Sanderson Kickstarter, so I got a book at midnight on January 1st, and I was out when I got the email, because it was New Year's Eve, already New Year's in that case, because it's 2 a.m. for me. And I opened it right away because I wanted to see what it looked like. And I read the ebook because I don't have the physical book yet. I listened to some of the audiobook at the same time as I read the ebook. And I was also checking the full page illustrations on my tablet in full color. But I can't wait to see it in person, in paper, because I'm sure they're going to look gorgeous. And like I said, I already want to reread this book because it was exactly the type of book that I love. So Tress of the Emerald Sea is a book set in the Cosmere. If you don't know what the Cosmere is, it's this big universe that Brandon Sanderson created, that a lot of his books and his series are set in this world, this universe. And in this one, we're following Tress. She is a girl that lives in a rock in a sea that's not made of water, and the boy that she likes basically gets kidnapped and taken away, and she goes into this journey to save him. So the story of this book that Brandon Sanderson tells is that he was watching The Princess Bride with his family, and his wife said, oh, what if the woman, the Buttercup on the movie, she had more agency and she did more stuff? Because in Princess Bride, she's basically just waiting to be saved, and Brandon Sanderson wrote that story. He wrote it for his wife, and we can tell that there's a lot of passion put into it, and there's a lot of care put into the story, and it was really good. Princess Bride is one of my favorite movies. It is one of my favorite books. I have a really pretty edition here that I don't know where it is, but that I want to reread soon, especially after reading Tress. And this book is told in the perspective of Hoid. So he's the narrator of the story. If you don't know who Hoid is, he is a character from the Cosmere universe that appears in pretty much all the books in the Cosmere. So we know that he's been traveling around all of the different planets that are in the Cosmere. And he's a very humorous character. He's a very sarcastic and witty, I would say, character. And he has exactly the type of humor that I love in books. It's very meta, it's very ironic and sarcastic and the funniest way, and he knows how to say the things that he wants to say in the way that the person who's listening will care about it. And in the case of Tress, we don't know who he's telling the story for, and I'm very curious if we'll ever know. I know it doesn't matter, but I'm very curious if we will ever know who he's telling the story to. But there's a lot of life lessons that he's telling throughout the story as well, that for us are still, it doesn't sound like life lessons, it just sounds like his sarcastic commentary on life, but in a way that is very, very relatable in a lot of it. And I highlighted so much on the ebook as I was reading it, and I can't wait to put tabs. I won't write on the pretty leather-bound edition, but I will put tabs on it for sure, because I want to revisit a lot of this throughout the years, because it's really well written and it's really well told. And I've seen the author talking about how challenging it was for him to write in this perspective, a whole book in this perspective, because Hoid tells a lot of stories in the other books, but they're very short stories, and now it's a whole book in his perspective, and he did it. It was really, really good. We have this fantastical, almost fairy tale like story. If you think about the way The Princess Bride is, it's a very simple setting, not world, because he created this whole new magic system in this world, but it's a very simple steps that you have to take to do what you want to do, like in a fairy tale, but it's very complete. So she's on this ship, and she's with this whole crew of people with her, and all of them have personality. We have some characters that are from other worlds, not exactly characters, but like types of characters. I won't say anything, so I won't spoil if you haven't read any of his books. But one thing that I will say, this book can for sure be read without having read the others, but I would not recommend it, because it gets to a point that he references a lot of different things from pretty much all of his other books. So we have Warbreaker, Elantris, Mistborn. Is there a Way of Kings? Stormlight? Maybe not Stormlight. I'm not completely sure. But for sure, Mistborn, Elantris, Warbreaker, all of those are in some way or another referenced in this story. So I would recommend you read all of the Cosmere first. It's getting really hard to recommend Brandon Sanderson at this point, because he keeps making all these crossovers in his books. But yeah, that's where we are at, I guess. But it's a beautiful story. It's a magical, whimsical tale, and I think it was more impactful knowing that it was told by Hoyt, because if it was just a random whatever story with those witty comments, it might have seemed pretentious, but the way that Hoyt tells it, and he is actually in the story as well, so he comments on himself a lot, so all of that made it very special. So I really love this book. It was my favorite book I read this year for sure. I will reread it when I get the physical copy. I want to reread it so bad. I almost reread it in January, but I'm like, oh, let's wait for the physical book, and then it took longer than I wanted it to, but when it's here, I will reread it, and I'll tap everything because it was so gorgeous, and I love the story so much. So in February, I only read 2 books so far, and I thought about merging all of this here, but I'll leave it to its own video. Hopefully I'll finish at least 2 more books, then I'll have more to talk about. But I read the 3rd, Finlay, Donovan, and I just finished Justice of Kings yesterday, so I'm really excited to talk about that in the next wrap-up video. But that's it for all the books that I read in January. Let me know if you've read any of this, and if you watched until now, leave a dinosaur emoji in the comments, and remember to like and subscribe, and thank you so much for joining me. Bye!